Okay, in this activity, we are going to be looking at HIV. And what you need to know about HIV and AIDS is you need to know about how HIV, the virus, it's called the human immunodeficiency virus, how that actually affects your immune system and the methods of transmission. So, the first thing you need to know about HIV is that it's a retrovirus. So, I'm going to show you in the next slide kind of how that works in your body. But here's the general structure of HIV. It is essentially some RNA, and then often it'll also have some enzymes involved with it, which are called reverse transcriptase. And it will also have a viral envelope that allows it to gain entry into human cells. All right, so here is how it works. When HIV gains entry into the human host cell, it has some RNA in it. Now, RNA is, what's used to make proteins. It's not technically DNA, but because of the reverse transcriptase that comes along with it, and also actually your body makes some reverse transcriptase as well, it's going to take that the reverse transcriptase will take that viral RNA and actually do the reverse of transcription and turn it into a strand of DNA that will get eventually stitched into the DNA of the host cell. So that host cell has all of its normal, the human cell has 46 chromosomes, so it has those 46 chromosomes, but with a whole bunch of different genes in it. But now it has a new gene in it that is the viral DNA. So it's a gene, it's a whole bunch of genes that are attached to it to make new viruses. And that can lay dormant for a very, very long time. But every time that cell divides and creates new cells like that, it will also copy the viral genes along with the normal genes in the 46 chromosomes. And so all of the daughter cells from that original host cell, when it divides, are also going to have the HIV genes in it as well. And that is when someone technically has HIV, is they have the virus has been stitched into their DNA. But they might not show symptoms for a very long time. And now there's been a lot of treatments actually that can keep people from getting active AIDS, which is when some environmental trigger will trigger the cells to start making new viruses. And so when you move on to having the phase of AIDS, what happens is your cell's machinery, your own cell's machinery, will start transcribing the viral DNA and translating it into a whole bunch of new viruses, which will then break out of the cell and go infect more and more cells. So essentially, the virus has hijacked your cell's machinery to make a whole bunch more viruses. Now, the virus on its own can't do that. It needs a host cell. And the host cell it chooses happens to be with HIV. Why it's the immunodeficiency is it tends to choose to infect helper T cells in the body. And so if the helper T cells are their target cell of choice, you can only imagine what that does to the body's immune system. So it attacks the body's immune system, so it can't respond to any other infectious disease either. So people who get AIDS often get very sick or can die from something like pneumonia or another infectious disease because their body's immune system can't fight it because the helper T cells, which orchestrate your immune response, have been incapacitated. So you need to be able to explain that HIV infects human host cells, and the host cells they tend to target are going to be your helper T cells. And because they target helper T cells, your body is no longer able to activate its own immune response to new pathogens. So you're very susceptible. It's like a collapse of your immune system. You're susceptible to a number of different pathogens that you might not have ever gotten sick from. The next thing that you need to be able to talk about is how HIV is transmitted. The transmission of HIV is usually just through contact with blood or body fluids of infected people. So sexual intercourse is a way. Sharing hypodermic needles is another way. Breastfeeding newborns can be a way, as well as blood transfusions and organ transplants. But it's very important that you know that it cannot be transmitted through saliva or mosquitoes or casual contact with someone who has HIV or AIDS. It's just with sexual intercourse, hypodermic needles, breastfeeding, blood transfusion, organ transplants, that kind of stuff, which isn't your just everyday contact. Um, and it's also why when people talk about staying safe regarding sexual intercourse, that condoms are probably the most effective way, because it actually keeps the bodily fluids from mixing. And so all of these things are how we can transmit it, but it can't just be transmitted casually.